Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful brand new day, and welcome to Earth's Ascension with Carl and Ortrun Franklin. Good morning, Carl and Ortrun.
Good morning, Dana. Good morning, everyone that's listening. Thanks for taking time from your busy life to tune in and listen.
Yes, and also thank you to those that will be tuning in later. We really appreciate your being a part of this. Such a process, actually.
We are all, I'm going to say, masters to a large extent, of our own home. We are a major component of the energy that is created in our home. The love, the peace, the joy, the anger, the discord, the fear, and so on, comes from us and from others that live there. And if you can visualize in your heart and your mind what you would ideally like your home to be, the love, the joy, the peace, the companionship, the sharing. And now ask yourself, what is it that you can do? What is it that you can think and desire and say and physically do that will help create that environment in your home? And you are a major contributor to that. And you have the power and the ability to bring about most of those changes. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit with you in that we're dealing not just with us and our own home, but we're dealing with the entire planet. And I want you to shift your consciousness. The world is now your home. And you, instead of having a tremendous of power and control, you have a limited amount, because you share this home with 7.5 billion other people, all of whom have free will. But you are one of the more powerful ones on the planet as a light worker. And you contribute more to helping to shape the collective consciousness, or the energy field that makes up the surface of the earth, than most other people. And to ask yourself those same questions. What would you like your home, the world, to be like? Would you like peace? Would you like love? Would you like more caring and sharing? More cooperation between races and religions and nationalities and economic classes? What is it that you would want to create if you could? And it is those very same things that I'm going to presume that you would want in your own home. And the only thing that you have control over is yourself. Your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and your reactions. If you can rebuild it or build those within yourself, you are going to be influencing the collective consciousness of humanity, because the changes that you make are going to have a ripple effect, not only within your home, but within your neighborhood, your coworkers, with your community. And that's how we're going to make the changes, one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time. And you can you are playing a role in doing that. So if you can elevate your consciousness to recognize that you are not only a member of your own family, but a member of the human race, and that the planet is your home. and do all that you can, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to help raise the vibrations of the human race, who have a tremendous effect on the earth itself. So that's the kickoff. And I'm going to turn it over to Ortrun to see if what she's saying. No,
Well, no, I want to. I just want to mention that the topic for us today is reality. And reality can be so many different things. We have our own realities because of where we are in consciousness, because you spoke about consciousness, Carl, right? That's really what you were talking about the whole time, was that. And the important thing is to recognize that what we are feeling on the inside is also what is reflecting on the outside for us. So it is important that we take a look at ourselves, take an inventory of ourselves, and see what isn't quite working quite right within our lives, with our relationships, with everything that is around us. It was really interesting to me that over this last month, we have been swamped. We've been busy with company, people staying here. It's been extremely, a lot of, I'm going to say, pressure. And then Carl's had some issues also, so that also added more pressure for me. But what I found myself doing at that time was I was starting to, I'm going to say, tap back into things that I hadn't even thought about or experienced in a long time. I think our having had this pandemic and our having to stay in our homes as long as we have, not really being able to have all of the outside influence that we'd have usually for a year, basically, we were sheltered. And that probably brought up many things within the people around the planet. And some of the things are things that really and truly need to be looked at. My understanding is that there are many people that are having psychological problems, things of that sort. But it gave us that time to pull away from all society and be with ourselves. And when you were with yourself, is there anything that came up that you thought, wow, this is old stuff? I realized for myself, and I'd like you to think about that for yourself, is, I was born during World War II, and I had a little granddaughter sitting on my lap that we were watching the fireworks, and I said to her, sometimes I don't really like those loud noises. And I remember being on top of a building watching the fireworks, and everyone was just so enthralled with them and just loved them. And I just had to close my eyes, and I wanted to run away because it reminded me of bombings going on. I was only 2 months old when we fled our home, but that came into my consciousness. I hadn't thought about that for years. But with that coming back into my consciousness, it was like, okay, there's still something here that you need to deal with. It might sound like a trivial thing on one hand, but it isn't. And I also started noticing when people open the door and I jump. There's something when I hear that noise of the door, I jump. Again, it goes back to way back when I was such a small child. Looking back when I started to investigate it, it's important for us to take time, especially coming out of this time of the pandemic, to see what's going on within us and to see if there is something, if there are old messages that are still sitting there that you've covered up and haven't really looked at for a long time. And look at them, and if you have, pass them on. Hand them to your divine inner self and say, here it is, and ask for that new energy to come in. That is how we can start changing reality within us, because we're not going to be able to change reality in the outer world if we're not going to change any reality within ourselves. So reality is I'm going to say a living, breathing thing all the time that is part of us. And it controls us, as all of you know. And it is important to change and look at ourselves and see what needs to be done. We saw many things, during this time where all these different issues started coming up and all the different things that we thought we had resolved in the outer. They started coming up. Also, what is it within yourself that needs to be resolved? And if you resolve those, then we can really start assisting our planet in the upliftment process.
Ortrun is absolutely correct. It all begins within, and that's where the changes need to originate. And those are the changes that will have the biggest effect on each one of us as an individual.
And also our ancestral line.
Yes, there's more emphasis placed today than ever before in my lifetime on changing working with our ancestors. And if we can change ancestral patterns that are negative, and we can change them backwards in time, it changes them for ancestors that are not even in physical bodies any longer. And it will also then clear it from our ancestral line so that our descendants that are not yet conceived, they won't have to go through that. So it allows them to come into a better world. Now, my emphasis is what's happening in the outer world, and I get a lot of questions about, what's going to be happening. And we know that there are earth changes. We're already experiencing in terms of the weather changes that we're having. The drought in the West Coast is an example. Hitting high temperature world records is also a fact of life. And the uneven distribution of rain and the uneven distribution of heat and cold, and the fact that there are some places in the United States that have had snow in June, all right? Things that are just highly, highly unusual. So we've got that, but also the earthquake activity has picked up. And according to the Zettas, and the Zettas are a higher evolved space race, but are very much involved with the Earth. And they are channeling messages almost every day into the Earth. And they have to be read with discernment because they do not have, nor do they understand, linear time. They live in what we call now time, where everything is happening simultaneously. So with them, there's no past, present, and future like we have here. So their timing is absolutely horrible. They've been predicting things 20 years ago that have not yet happened, all right? And they said this will soon be happening. So anyway, we have had some early warnings of what is to come. The pandemic is one. And there are lessons to be learned from the pandemic. And one of the important lessons from my perspective is the scientists cooperated in coming up with a vaccine. Normally it takes 4 years to develop a vaccine. Here it was developed in a little less than a year because they shared information. They stopped competing with each other and cooperated. And that making that shift from competition to cooperation, I believe, is one of the big lessons of the pandemic for us as a human race. And Ortrun also mentioned it, the going within and discovering who you are and what you're not comfortable with, deal with it and change it. You're the only one that can change it, and there is all kinds of help available. Communicate with your soul, your spirit family, your angels, your guides, your teachers, and communicate with your divine soul. Ask for their assistance. And that's the same way you change your ancestral line, is working with not only your soul and your spirit family, but the souls and spirit families of all of the ancestors that have gone through that you want to modify and get rid of. Okay? So it's connecting the outer world with the inner world, connecting the inner world and asking it to be involved and active in the physical world. And they will do that. But they will only do that if you ask, because there is a law of non-interference. They can't mess with what's happening here. But if we ask, it gives them and it gives the angels great pleasure in being able to help us because they love us. And you know how it makes you feel when a loved one asks for help and you're able to help them overcome a challenge? Well, they have the same reaction. So it isn't that we're placing a burden on them by asking. We're actually giving them the opportunity to feel a great deal of joy and satisfaction. Okay, Ortrun, do you have anything else here at this point?
Well, I'd just like to ask you, what do you think reality is?
Okay, reality it happens on two levels. One, it happens within ourselves, and it happens in the world outside of ourselves. And here we're dealing with both levels of reality. And it happens in the physical world and it happens in the spirit world. And believe it or not, what happens in the spirit world also has an impact on us here in the physical. We may not consciously be aware of it because it's happening, I'm going to say, internally. And a lot of what happens in the spirit world is communicated to us via the subconscious mind. And we are not taught to use our subconscious mind. And that is so sad to me. Now, in the meditative state, we're in a state that we're working out of the conscious and subconscious together. So what we're receiving on the subconscious level, we are consciously aware of. Whereas if it just comes in a dream state, most of our dreams we don't remember. It's the communication and the spirit realm dialoguing with each other without the conscious mind being aware. But in meditation, the conscious mind is aware, and that puts us in a better position to not only be informed, but to make the changes that might be needed. Now, the reality is the Earth is going through a time of very rapid change in terms of geological time. Geology changes usually very slowly over thousands or tens of thousands of years, whereas now things are happening annually, monthly, far, far more frequently. We say that time has speeded up, and geologically time has speeded up tremendously. And one of the things the Zettas are saying, and again, don't know the timing on this. Timing is, as far as I know, not knowable. But there's going to be major earthquake activity. That it is happening around the world, but it's going to be happening here in the United States. And this last week, for the first time, the Zettas gave us a map of these earthquake changes. And a large earthquake moving up the Mississippi and splitting off at the Ohio River. Fault lines are usually, are commonly followed by, or in river valleys, okay, because the crust is thinner there. And the earthquake that goes up the Ohio River will continue beyond the river and go through Chicago. It will touch the southern end of Lake Michigan. It will cut across the lower part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. It looks like, based on the map, it would go south of Kalamazoo, and it will either hit or go slightly north of Detroit. And then it will move up the northern edge of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. So it would be on the Canadian-American line. And it may go all the way up through the Niagara River. And that's going to be a fairly major split, and which means that that will probably become a new river bed, all right, except in the Great Lakes, which is already in essence a movement of water. There may be another branch of that goes up into as far north as Minnesota. It may not happen at the same time. According to what the Zettas were saying, the implication was that would occur later. But there would be another one that would branch off right near the Mississippi of the Gulf, and it would go through the southern states, and it would encompass Mississippi and Louisiana, Georgia, and of course Florida would be a part of this land that's breaking off. It would go west of the Carolinas, or in the western part of the Carolinas, and so we've got our continent then has been broken into three pieces. We've got the western coast. We've got this big chunk of land that's from the Mississippi over from the Mississippi and the Ohio River, then going south and west to the southern states. And then we've got these southern states that have been broken off. And the implications of this, we've been given a warning sign on this. You remember, maybe it was 6 weeks ago when they shut down a pipeline that carried petroleum products from basically the western part of the country to New England. And they said it was because there was a threat. If you didn't pay us X number of dollars, we're going to mess up your whole community, your whole internet system. Well, that wasn't the real reason at all. The real reason is on these major oil lines. They have sensors that sense vibration, that sense earth movement. And they sensed earth movement that indicated there could be a major earthquake coming. So they shut down the pipeline to avoid just a natural disaster of how much oil dumping into the Mississippi that would then carry it out into the Gulf. And it wasn't until the earth settled down and they were fairly certain that there wasn't going to be an earthquake that they then reopened the pipeline. It was 4 or 5 days later. But in the meantime, New England ran out of gas. Now, if you can imagine a major earthquake along the Mississippi, bridges would not survive, pipelines would not survive, electrical high-tension wires would not survive. We would be split off with energy, with food, with transportation, with all kinds of products that shipped east to west or west to east. So we need to be prepared for that. And the best way I know to be prepared is to raise your consciousness, to the Christed level, where Jesus was able to call energy into whatever form he desired. He could take a boy's lunch and feed 5,000 people with it. And that's a role that we could play at Christ consciousness. We can call energy into whatever form we or our family members or our neighbors or co-workers might need. And for us to be able to do that and we could avoid all land, air, and water transportation. It would also save an awful lot of money, but it would save literally millions of lives. So my goal is to work to try to attain that level of consciousness, not just for my personal benefit or my family's benefit, but for the benefit of all of the people that are a part of my life. Here's Ortrun.
Well, I just want to mention, because this is a possibility. The Zettas are giving this prediction, right, Carl?
Yes.
Yes. And okay, there have been many, many predictions about things of this sort happening, but we as individuals, we have the energy to change and transmute the energy vibration of really anything. So if we start focusing our attention on, ourselves, healing ourselves, we're going to start healing the planet also. We've talked about Nibiru, and Nibiru, what the disasters it could cause. But then with attention being placed upon it and sending, whatever light and love but really changing ourselves, because I think that's the main thing. If we change ourselves, we're going to change and be uplifted to a higher level of awareness and consciousness, where these things aren't going to be able to happen anymore. One of the other things that you talked about, Carl, just the other day, was that we talked about, when you talked about these earthquakes and so on, and this fault line and so on, we also mentioned California and the Andreas Falls, that fault line. And what was your thought on that? Because you mentioned that they were having smaller earthquakes, and so it seems to be preventing from large earthquakes to be happening.
Yeah, the geologists are hoping that the mini earthquakes that are happening in California averages about 100 earthquakes per day. So the geologists are saying that it's happening, in such a steady base and at such a low level that maybe there's not going to be a need for a major quake there, because the Earth is shifting gradually in a way that is not destructive to structures on the face of the Earth. So there is a way of doing that, in what I'm going to call a more peaceful, gentle way.
I'm going to see if anyone has any questions or any comments on this. We only have a few more minutes left.
Well,
is there anyone that might
everyone is just enthralled in the conversation. So the one question is, for everyone who's just beginning the path of maybe meditation or contemplation, and they want to be able to participate in elevating the consciousness and the vibration of Grandmother Earth, what's an easy way to step into maybe 5 minutes in the morning or in the evening to participate?
Well, actually, this is something that Carl and I tell all of our students to do on a regular basis, because as you're waking up in the morning or going to sleep at night, you're in the alpha state. And the alpha state is also known as the meditative state. So it's that in-between state where you're drifting into sleep or waking up, slowly waking up. At that time is the best time for you to focus on intention of what it is that you desire to create. And because all of us here are very much aware of our planet and hope to uplift our planet, it's a wonderful time to, first and foremost, fill yourself with divine, radiant light and love, so that every cell of your body is filled with that energy, vibration. And then radiate that energy vibration from within your heart, from your soul level, out into the planet. Visually, yes, visualizing the planet being filled also with this divine, radiant light and love, and so that anything that might be disruptive on the planet can be neutralized and see it being transformed in that which is the perfect way that the planet should be functioning. And so see yourself really not separate from the planet, but you're becoming part of that planet. And it is all in harmony, and it's in harmony with not just you, but with everyone that is upon the planet, and also with all that is around us and into the different levels of vibratory frequency.
As we raise our frequency, we raise the frequency of the planet. And if we can help the planet avoid traumatic changes with cleansing, because what we're talking about is a cleansing process, getting rid of those thought patterns, those institutions, those methodologies that are detrimental to humanity and to the earth. If we can change that in our heart, in our mind, and then in our outer reality, the earth doesn't have to do the cleansing. And if we don't do the cleansing on that level, then there's no option but Mother Earth has to do it herself.
And it becomes consciousness, a group consciousness, so that the more that we do this, the more we're able to bring that level of a vibratory frequency around our planet, and it's being uplifted, so that what transpires then is that which is of the highest essence.
And the more we do it, the less the earth has to do, so it will not be so traumatic. Okay?
What a great show today. Wonderful show. And happy birthday tomorrow, Ortrun.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I hope you all are blessed and have just an absolutely wonderful day and a wonderful month. And we hope we're together soon.
Well, we will be. So thank you again for tuning in, and lots of love and hugs from us.
Have a beautiful birthday. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.